If you've been looking for the best all-around muscle car you can still buy today, you might want to look into a Dodge Charger Scat Pack. What's going on, guys? If you clicked on this video, you're probably wondering some stuff about this Dodge Charger Scat Pack. Today we're in a 2019 Charger Scat Pack that belongs to a good friend of ours, and they were very generous of us to take this thing for a little test drive and do a little review. We're just going to go over some basic specs, what's it like to actually own one of these, and I'm going to drive this thing for probably about a good hour or so in traffic. I'm going to take it on the highway. I'm going to take it on back roads. I'm going to nail it. I'm going to just play with some of these settings that we got here. I'm just going to have fun with it. This is a fun car. This is what Dodge built this car for, and we're going to take this thing for a ride. So let's hear the 6.4 liter start up. Okay. That is one thing I will say right off the bat. This is going to be a car review from a legit car guy. I'm not just some journalist that got their foot into a door at some car company that happens to do journalism and articles and stuff. I work on my own stuff. I've had some mediocrely fast cars that I've done all myself. I've rebuilt engines. I've done engine swaps. I daily drive an LS Swap 79 Firebird that I did myself. If you want to check that car out, I'm going to leave a video up here to go check that out. But for now, we're going to take this thing for a ride. This gas pedal is not light at all. Just give this thing the slightest throttle and it's wanting to go. And I'm watching the miles per hour over here, and it'll get away from you really quick. This 6.4 liter is rated at 485 horsepower and 475 foot-pounds of torque. And I will tell you what, for a big, heavy car, these cars are around 4,200 pounds. I mean, I'm gonna give it half throttle and it pulls. You know that this is a larger displacement engine, and knowing that I've owned a brand new Mustang 5.0, it didn't pick up like this car does. Now, maybe in a quarter mile in the long run, the lighter car's gonna win, but off the line, I'm gonna say this right now, and I'm a Ford fan, this thing right here is gonna beat that Mustang off the line unless you got a really good driver. I mean, just going from stock to stock, this thing's got some giddy up to it, and it's that old saying, you know, no replacement for displacement, and it's holding true. It's holding true. And to back up that 485 horsepower, you have an 8-speed transmission made by ZF, and that brand has been around forever. They've done stuff for race cars and heavy duty vehicles, anything from your old F-350s with the 5 speeds in it to the Aston Martins and race cars and like actual like real European track cars. And I believe it's a German company, so I mean, they're not playing around. This transmission shifts extremely smooth for as quick as it shifts. And me just going back to my old racing roots and stuff, the way that I grew up, we would put shift kits in like old TH350s. They were never smooth at shifting. And that's not exactly a bad thing. It was just, when it's gonna shift right now. Just to show an example, I'm just gonna lightly go and just, and you hear it shift, but it's not like first, second, third. Now, it might get that way if we switch it over to track mode. Right then and there, it just immediately, it's like it opened up the throttle body like twice as much just by hitting that. I felt the car, whoa. We just unlocked about 85 horsepower. I can already tell track mode might not be something that you want to drive all the time if you're trying to save fuel. because it's wanting to keep the RPMs up just a little higher. So let's just do. Just there's just miles per gallon. This thing just, it's so smooth. Even with track mode, I mean, the shifts are still extremely smooth, and ZF did a tremendous job on this transmission. They did tremendous, and for the reliability that I've seen, they put this transmission just about everything nowadays in at least their rear-wheel drive cars. Let's switch it back to auto so we're not constantly switching back and forth every time I push the gas pedal that much further. This car boogies. It moves and it is fun. So to go back to what I originally said, this is my pick for the best all-around muscle car that you can still buy today. And the reason I'm saying that is you have almost 500 horsepower. It's naturally aspirated, low maintenance. Parts are fairly available. For you guys and gals that got little ones, you got plenty of room in the back for car seats, toys, extra things that the kiddos want to bring along with them, because you know they can't walk out the door without having something in their hands, something to play with. And you can pile up 5 people in here, go grocery shopping, because that trunk is massive. I don't know how many golf bags it is, but I'm gonna say it's at least probably 3 or 4. And that's where this car kind of comes into its original roots, is that the Charger has always been a big body car, never a 4-door until it came back around 05, 06, whenever it came out again. And me personally, I wasn't a big fan of that body style, but I wouldn't mind having one, if that makes sense. Especially an old 6.1. I know it had its head problems and everything, but I would still take one just to say I had one. And especially the old Super Bs that you can get that were blue, that almost like a B5 blue or whatever Mopar called them. It's just such a pretty car. Beautiful blue. Fun car. Now the interior on those, not a big fan of, and then they updated these when they changed the body style on these, and they're a lot more user friendly. The touch screen stuff's way better. You don't have to sit there and tap on the screen, and I know all about that. I had an 09 Chrysler 300C, and my Durango RT has that same one. It was the last year of that stereo, and man, am I kicking myself for not getting 1 year newer. But this touch screen is bright, visible, clear at any time of day. The pixels in it, it's not all pixelated and just outdated, and it looks up to date even though this car is 5 years old. Dodge did great on that. Now going into fuel economy, if you're talking about the best all around muscle car, all these muscle cars that are out nowadays don't get that bad of gas mileage. When I had a 2017 Mustang GT, if I babied it, I got about 28, 29 miles to the gallon, and that's not bad at all. I usually got around 450 miles to a tank driving back and forth to work, and I drive 82 miles round trip, so I mean most of that's highway or back road driving. And these cars here, unfortunately, the Hemis are probably the worst at the gas mileage. The best I have seen these cars get is around 23, 24 miles to the gallon, and that alone is not that bad, honestly. Still, that is not horrible. Is what I've seen in city driving. These cars get around 12 to 14 or so. It's not that good, and the reason I think that is just by driving this car. Now, this is my second time in this car, and the first time I rode it, I was like, whoa, this thing's got kind of a big stall in it. And coming from experience, my wife's old GTO, she got a 4200 stall in her GTO, and I mean RPMs would go way up before the car even started moving. I mean, that car was kind of serious. And just this car alone, it's completely stock, other than it's got a little bit of exhaust work on it. The RPMs on it go up about to 2000 RPM, so that tells me alone it's got a converter in it. Loose a little bit at first, and then as soon as you stomp on it, this thing is tight and it is going. So that's one thing. I looked up the specs. Gosh, I'm kicking myself. I can't remember what it is, but I believe these have like a 2300 stall or 2500 stall or something like that. It's actually fairly large for a stock car. And being that it's over 2,000 RPM, up around the 2,300 RPM, you could put a little bit bigger cam in this thing, and your tuner would be okay with you and not want to slap you in the face because he's having a hard time getting this thing not to stall when you let off the gas when you're coming up to a red light. When it comes to modifying these cars used to be, that Hemis alone used to be stupid expensive, and I just didn't understand it because it's, if you look at them both side by side, bare block, maybe, you know, just maybe like with the heads on or something, just block for block, they are very similar to the LS. All right, let's turn here and let's give it the beans a little bit. Woo! These tires said, we're a little cold right now. Let's not do this right now. We got a little sideways there. Now, I haven't checked, but there might be like 40 PSI in the back of these tires. And these are NT 555s. And I'll be the first to admit, I have been a hater of the 555s forever. I can't stand them. I had them on my old WS6 and I got them now. Unfortunately, the previous owner put them on my Camaro SS that I have now. And I can't stand those tires when they're cold. But these tires here, I've noticed they can handle a little bit more power. They're a little bit more sticky when cold. And, you know, not complaining, you know, from warm tire versus warm tire. You know, it's definitely going to be more stickier when you got a warmer tire. But for the most part, these tires, if it was warmer outside, these tires will hook up, and I'm sure it'll go. And like I said, I'm sure the PSI in them is around 40. So if we lower the PSI and we get a little bit of heat in them, this thing's going to stick and get. And so going back to modifying these, they used to be extremely expensive compared to your LS and your they were even competing with Ford with their prices, like to do a cam swap. I remember when these were first starting to come around, people were starting to modify them. You can get a whole cam kit and it was like $3,000. I'm like, who's buying that? No wonder these things took forever for people to modify these, because they're so stupid expensive and they were way overpriced. And now brands like Texas Speed has finally jumped on a board, and you can get a cam kit for no more or no less than cam in your LS. I mean, you can get a cam in here that doesn't require valve springs, you know, for like $400. That's LS price. That's the biggest misconception about LS. People say LSs are cheap. It's like, no, they're not exactly cheap. They're just cheaper than Ford and Mopar. But now, thankfully for brands like Texas Speed, they've jumped on board with the Mopar wagon, and I appreciate that. I think there should be more competition out there, and these things are at the tracks like crazy. This is probably one of the most popular car that you see at the tracks, and I honestly think because it's a family wagon that runs 12s, and with little modifications you can get these in the 11s. I mean, it ain't nothing for these to get into the 11s. So from a stock perspective, with the 8-speed, I have seen these run about a 12.6 at the fastest, being completely stock, and maybe it has exhaust but not tuned. So I've seen cars with the perfect weather, perfect tire, perfect suspension setup, and maybe it's got a tune, it's got exhaust, it might have a cold air intake, or maybe it's got a ported throttle body or a ported intake. You know, basic bolt-on stuff. I've seen these cars run 11.8s. I mean, that's pretty quick for barely manipulating your car. That is very, very respectable for a very heavy car. You know, a four-door car on top of that. Who wants to get passed by a four-door car? I mean, come on. Who wants to get passed by a four-door car? That's, back in the day, that was embarrassing. But now, I mean, just the race car guy in me, I kind of want to get like an old 4-door Tempest, like an early mid-60s Tempest 4-door, just because they're dirt cheap right now. You can get those running and driving for like $2,000. And I'm like, shoot, you can build a Pontiac pretty cheap, fairly cheap still. Or if you want to go down the LS route and just turbo it or nitrous the piss out of it, I mean, that'd be cool too. And just have a sleeper, and you got dog dish hubcap wheels on it and everything, and it's just a little cammed 4-door Tempest, and little do you know that thing runs low 11s if not high 10s. That would be sweet. Barely goosing it. Gotta get up this hill, but this car for sure hits the miles per gallon button. It's got all the right noises, it's got all the right features. And after driving this car for over an hour now, I have 2 complaints of it. One, this A-pillar right here is in the way sometimes. It's big and fat. I don't know if it's because of my height. I'm 5'10". I'm not that big of a guy. And I can tell these cars were built for bigger people. But I can tell every once in a while, I feel like I'm a little too close to it. And it sometimes gets in the way when you get at a red light or a stop sign or something. When you're trying to look both ways. But that's just kind of a minor complaint. You just got to kind of, oh, okay, we're good over there. Or, oh, okay, we're good. But that's not that big of a deal. But then the second issue I have with this car is not a big deal for me, but I can see it being a big deal for other people. These seats, they're hugging me just about perfect. Now, I could be a little bit fatter, and I'd still be okay. But if you're probably like a 6'4", 6'5" gentleman, and you're probably pushing 250, if not more, these seats might not be comfortable for you. A really neat thing about these Scat Packs is they're basically like the stripped down race car. So you can get the SRT and it's got all the bells and whistles and the fancy seats and everything, but the Scat Pack was supposed to be like the entry level. You get the Brembo brakes. You can either get an option between the 6-piston or the 4-piston. This car is equipped with the 4-piston. And you had an option either between the base stereo, or you can get the touchscreen like this car has. This does have the Alpine stereo, and that is good enough, at least for me. This thing, the boom booms in here are boom booming. That's good enough, and it sounds pretty good. And that's one thing that Dodge has always kind of done, is they've always had decent stereos, even in their just base model cars. Except around your 2007, 8, 9, when you got kind of, when the whole world was kind of shutting down a little bit, they kind of said, okay, we're going to put these even cheaper paper speakers in here, and they might last you a year. I remember my parents bought just the trim level above a base model Durango back in 2002, and that stereo, it was back then, they would put Infinity in their cars, Infinity stereos and speakers in their cars, which is a pretty good brand. And that car that Durango didn't have it, but that stereo still boomed pretty good for just the stock bass little poopy little speakers that it had in it. And this goes to show right here, this is just above. I mean, this isn't no base model RT or anything. This is the actual Scat Pack 392, so it's got some bells and whistles when it comes to performance. But for options for this car, we don't have a sunroof. You could get this car with a sunroof, but this is a low option car. Other than you have the base cloth seats, which are very nice. You have the upgraded stereo, which is the Alpine with the touchscreen, and the Brembo brakes. What more do you want? I mean, unless you're a bells and whistles kind of guy. I mean, me personally, less is more. I mean, that just goes to show. I mean, I could afford the most expensive Mustang GT on the lot in 2017 when I bought my Mustang, but I looked around and I was like, I know I want 373 gears, I know I want a 6-speed, and I don't care about anything else. And definitely want a GT, obviously. But the first thing I did is they had like 9 GTs on the lot. I just crawled underneath, and Ford has a little sticker on the rear end. I looked underneath. Okay, this one's got 308 gears. Don't want that one. This one's got 355s. We're getting a little bit better than the third one I looked at. It had 373 gears. I'm like, okay, cool. This is the one I want. And it just so happened it was a base model, and that was the only car they had with 373s and a 6-speed on the lot that was a GT at the time. And I was okay with that. And I'll say to this day, that was the easiest buying process I've ever done. After we got done with the test drive, it was literally about 30 minutes and I was going home. It was just, here's my information, give it to the bank, here we go, bada bing, bada boom, we're done. If I ever buy a new car again, which I don't plan on it, I'm kind of stuck on old cars right now and making old cars new. And which is like what I did with my 79 Firebird. I LS swapped it. I'm about to do a cam, put a Holley intake and all kinds of goodies on it. So if you guys want to stick around to that, you might want to check that out. It'd be pretty neat to see how much horsepower we can squeeze out of that and maybe get some quarter-mile times. It just never gets old. I don't think the little kid in me is ever going to go away. When you get the little giggles and the little tickle in your tummy when you hit the gas, it's just, there's something about it. Growing up, my dad was a Mopar, no car kind of guy. He had a 73 Barracuda with a 408 stroker in it, and he'd just ride around. And it was a 3-speed. He had like 456 gears in it, and so that car was always at high RPM. And I'll never forget, my dad was just so addicted to the throttle and the noises, and it was just like he was a little kid, and that just drove it into me and my brother and my sister. I remember, here, let me just show you what my dad used to do. So we're riding around 3,000 RPM, and you know, because that car had 456s, and we're just riding around, my dad would just go, and then, whew, that was a cop. And just doing that, and me and my brother would just think that's so funny. My dad would, I would just like look over at my dad, and he's just smiling the whole time. It's just, the giggles never go away. Once you get addicted to throttle, once the horsepower bug bites you, it's game over. It's game over. There's no stopping you from wanting that addiction again. And you know what they say, get your kids into cars, because once you start modifying cars, they're cheaper than drugs, and your kids won't do drugs. I love the noises. And it's so neat too. I mean, it's one of those things, is when you hear a Hemi, you know it's a Hemi. It's like when you hear an LS or a Coyote, you know what it is. Like, you hear it off in the distance and it's like, that was a Mustang. And then you think about it, it's like, that was definitely a Coyote. And you hear one of these and they got that deep rumble. No matter what exhaust you have, these Hemis just have such a deep tone. And you hear a deep tone V8 rumbling by, you're like, that was a Hemi. Can't tell if it was a 5.7 or 6.4, but that was a Hemi. Or a 6.2. You can tell the 6.2s because you can hear the whine. All right, let's do one more pull for the road. Woo! This car, I don't know if the rear end's light or what, but I love it. I love it. This car is ready to party, and it's fun. I probably said that too much. This car is fun. This car is so much fun. I've probably said that way too much already. This car is surprisingly, for a four-door, it is extremely fun. It takes turns very good, surprisingly. For a big, heavy car, it just floats. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it off right here. This was just a short video to show you this is my pick for the best all-around muscle car that you can buy today. If you like videos like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button, hit the bell, so you know when I'm posting new videos. I'm trying to do at least one a week. We're trying to get this built up. I got car builds coming out, car reviews coming out. You don't want to miss them. We're trying to make this thing work. We're trying to make this thing big. We're trying to make things entertaining. We'll bring it all to you guys on the next video. Take it easy.